Now we are live. That took a few seconds there.
What kind of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery, and we've managed more than $1 billion in that recovery. We're here providing you actionable information, stuff you can use, information you need to know about as a business owner or a community association. We want to make sure that we are delivering this every single week, so thank you for joining us this week on the Recovery Report. As you might have noticed, particularly if you're living anywhere on the Atlantic coastline or in the Gulf, it is very busy out there. There's a lot of congestion. There's new storms popping up pretty much, or areas of interest, let me say that, every single day. Right now we're looking at area of interest of 18, which they believe is going to actually turn into a major hurricane. Its trajectory definitely threatens the United States, so something we want to pay particular attention to, but it has to make it through the Caribbean, where they have been absolutely battered by storms and bad weather, so our hearts and prayers obviously go out to those in the path of all of these storms, including 18. But there are others out there that are going to cause incremental weather up and down the East Coast and the Gulf, and so you want to continue to make sure you monitor those situations. I know a lot of the Gulf states as well as the East Coast are still picking up from the prior storms that have rolled through, whether it's just major heavy flash flooding or hurricanes or winds or whatever it may have been, tornadoes. We have to stay vigilant in our preparation, and because it's not just about the storms, it's also about the pipe breaks, the fires. They're still happening. So we want to make sure we're constantly practicing preparedness, constantly thinking about it, particularly as we are now in the fall season. Things are going to start to change. It's going to get cooler outside. Suddenly, we're going to realize that it is all of a sudden winter. And now we're talking about pipe breaks. We're talking about snow. We're talking about hail. Other events that you need to be cognizant of and monitoring. But as business owners and community associations that are practicing preparedness, they're going to be resilient. They're going to be making sure that they're taking the steps to protect themselves. Every week we've been talking about our success stories over the past 10 years. And one story that comes to mind is a recent success we actually had this week. Last week we talked about a multi-million-dollar recovery for an association that had hurricane damage that came to us shortly after they reported a claim. This particular association came to us very much later, way after they had reported the claim, after they had started the mitigation efforts, where they started actually making repairs, doing everything else. Obviously, the insurance company claimed prejudice. They claimed they didn't properly notice them of the issues. They didn't give an opportunity to inspect or do much of those things. All led to extreme amount of delays. It was just a reminder of taking your time. It was also a reminder of the impact that GlobalPro has had on community associations and business owners early on in the claim process when we are given the opportunity to actually report the claim, meaning they called us first. They called us to allow us the opportunity to report the claim, which is in stark contrast to the results and the issues that were at issue in this case that unfortunately finally got resolved just recently for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I truly believe the claim was worth a tremendous amount more money than that, but there were issues of prejudice. There were things that the insured could not prove. regardless of their sworn testimony. They just didn't have any substantial photographs or documentation to prove the existence of the damages. They didn't go through the efforts of giving the insurance company the opportunity to inspect. They ran ahead and already started the mitigation or started to rebuild without giving the proper notice. We went in and had to recreate the scenario and work with the insurance companies and their experts to investigate the things, to talk to the contractors and the people involved that were on the ground to really kind of weave together and sew together the story of their claim. We still obtained a substantial recovery. However, it took a lot more time. It took a lot more money and effort on behalf of the insured as well as GlobalPro to make this possible. But it did get done. But again, it's a stark contrast to those that call us first, those that allowed us to report the claim, that allowed us to go through the claims process for them. You know, last week we talked about one where we got involved shortly after they reported the claim and it resulted in millions of dollars, right? This one, we got involved way after the fact, right? So at any point, it's a good time to call us because you can get a positive result. But calling us first certainly shows us that we can get more and we can get it done sooner and better and faster. But it's not always about getting more. It's mostly about getting what you're entitled to. And that really is why it's important to call us first, because we want to make sure we document these things. We want to make sure that you are documenting things or obtaining the documentation as the insured and reporting and dealing with those things as they're being done. We want to make sure that you're going through the steps and complying with your policy and giving the proper notice and everything else to make sure that you're obtaining the recovery you're entitled to. Not just getting more money. That's not what it's just all about. It's about getting what you're entitled to. It's making sure that you're checking all the boxes and the compliances and making sure that you're doing everything you can to protect the interests of your fellow unit owners, your board, you as a fiduciary, if you're a board member or a property manager, as well as a business owner, making sure that you're doing what you can to protect your business. You have employees, you have family that's relying on you to make sure that your business is here tomorrow. So making sure that you're taking the time to do these things and doing them in a proper order. That's also really important. We've seen many associations or many business owners that just run ahead and start doing things kind of out of order, right? They're just starting to order things without even knowing what in fact they are going to get a recovery for or what they actually need to do. And also working with out-of-state contractors that don't have proper licensing or insurance, and all these problems that if you rush this, if you don't do things properly, can result in either a denial, an underpayment, and can cause financial hardship to your business and your community association. So avoid those things and get the advice and information you need. And like many of these associations that we deal with or business owners, you will get the result that you're looking for. You will make sure that your product, the product you pay all its money for, is performing and doing what it's supposed to, the insurance policy. Your brokers, your agents, they're not licensed to represent your interests. We've talked about this many times in prior episodes. So I'm not going to belabor that point, but the reality of it is that if you're relying on your agent or broker to do it, you're already making a mistake. If you are the one reporting a claim or allowing your broker or agent to report the claim, you can make mistakes that can cause delays and issues. So unfortunately, there's a lot of victims of a lot of these storms, and there's more storms out there. Start to think about these things. What is your plan? What's your plan of action if you suffer loss and damage? Have you already talked to insurance experts that particularly focus on recovery to help you navigate through that process? If you haven't, and you're only talking to an insurance agent or broker who probably doesn't even have a copy of your policy, guess what the result's going to be? It's not going to work out so well. So take the time, talk to the insurance experts, walk through the process, and allow us the opportunity to help you now plan, not only for the actual rebuilding of the property, but the recovery, getting the money that you need in order to rebuild. Speaking of which, I'm excited to invite on our next guest who works for a company that when we were talking with them about inviting them on a recovery report, I learned so much about their operation. I learned so much more about what they do and how they can help our clients and what they're doing after storms that I didn't even, I'll be honest, I had no idea. I had no idea that they were actually participating in these things, that they can help you so much, particularly for community associations or businesses out there, property management companies, in those recovery efforts. So without further ado, I do want to invite on Chad Mackey with DMI. Welcome to the show, Chad. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, my man. Glad to be here.
So Chad, DMI Paving and Sealcoating is the largest seal coat company in the United States, and it has been an industry leader in asphalt restoration since 1956. Now, I pulled that from your website, and so when I think DMI, that's typically what I'm thinking. And I want to change things for you guys because, when I started actually doing a little bit more research and then the opportunities that we've had to talk now twice about all the things you're doing, I started learning about all these other things you're doing, and I'm like, man, I need to know DMI. So tell us about the role of DMI. Tell us about the type of clients that you guys are dealing with, and where's your focus?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, obviously our focus started with, pavement maintenance down here in South Florida, and it grew throughout the state and then even into some of the other southern states. But we were primarily focused again on asphalt construction, maintenance, concrete, and just the basic needs of people to get around roadways and parking lots. And when you're in Miami and you're kind of headquartered here, you see what people go through every day, whether it's low-lying areas, whether it's mild storms that roam through, or whether it's Hurricane Andrew or Irma, where you have significant and major damage and debris blocking roadways, blocking communities, blocking places of business. We decided, hey, listen, we've got heavy equipment. We've got the wherewithal, and we're the guys that are out there first on the ground to see some of this damage and to report on it. So we kind of naturally evolved into a disaster response and recovery for our clients. So that started really small. And it's one of those things that you don't necessarily want to be advantageous about it, but people need help. And we have heavy equipment. We have multiple 3-yard loaders. We have 25 tandem dump trucks. We have all this equipment. We've got 20 chainsaws. We kind of built this barrage of equipment just in case, these catastrophic events happen, and they happen in our community, so that we can help our neighbors and our clients out and getting back to normal.
No, I reiterate, I've learned a lot in the short time that we've gotten to know each other here, and I'm excited to have you guys on to talk about these things. One thing I learned about you, I have a lot of licensing, a lot of experience. So how did you get your start at DMI?
Yeah, so I started out my career as a civil engineering consultant, and I did a bunch of design work. Did some structural engineering design at the onset. And I've always been kind of an environmentalist by heart, so I switched over to water resources, water quality, and did that for a long time, and really invested a lot of heart into it. And so naturally, I became a transportation materials engineer shortly thereafter. But it's kind of just moved and ebbed and flowed as careers often do, to where my expertise was more vital within my company. And so I did that and got pretty good at it, and then actually joined the world's largest retailer and managed their pavement asset network for about 3 years. Spent a short stint as a national contractor up in Chicago, and then reached out to our owner here, Ray Applebaum, about 11 years ago and said, look, I'm tired of freezing and shoveling snow out of my driveway and never seeing the sunshine. My kids need a tan. What do you say? And so we partnered up, and it's been a blessing for me and my family ever since to be down here in Miami.
Well, a lot of your story is very familiar to me because I've been through engineering school, studied materials, and now I'm handling insurance, and for many different community associations and business owners, like you are doing at DMI and managing and dealing with these larger projects. So. I too got sick and tired of shoveling snow. I was living in the Pennsylvania, D.C. area. So, hey man, a lot in common. And our senior vice president, his last name is Applebaum. So who knows? There's a lot of dots to connect here. Wow. A lot of similarities in our stories. So I'm very excited to get into the topic here. So we're talking about dewatering, debris removal, and documenting claim damage, right? And we're talking with DMI, Chad Mackey, and I want to talk about when a property needs and I want to focus on dewatering first. I want to preface it with this because we're hearing a lot about flooding these days. It's almost as if the winds have taken a back seat in the hurricanes to the flooding that they're causing. But the flooding isn't just because of hurricanes. The flooding is happening all the time right now in South Florida. You have the sea level rise issues, and you have these questions about infrastructure now. What are some of the biggest challenges your company faces when it comes to dewatering and dealing with community associations?
Yeah, sure. So like, as you said, the more prevalent storms are, the more intense they are. We have a very, very high water table down here. Some areas drain really quickly, but they still have a high water table. So you're going to get flash flooding. You're going to get that. And then, unfortunately, we've had some neighborhoods and communities that just don't drain as efficiently and as effectively for whatever reason. Either their storm sewers are under designed or overwhelmed by the intensity and the volume of the rainwater, or just they were built in low areas and they were kind of left to fend for themselves. Maybe they got a cheap property, they got a cheap deal out of it. These are the things that you kind of got to look at when you're acquiring real estate. So dewatering is a very specific engineering science. It stems from having to dig deep foundations and literally pump groundwater out via a series of wells just to be able to get a dry enough surface to work in to pour your foundation. But moreover, that we deal with, you've already got a hardscape, you've already got a parking lot or an underground garage, and there's nowhere to send the water. You got to pump it out. So we bring in a series of pumps, but first, we'll look at what does the surface of the water look like. Obviously, if there's oil plumes, if there's things like that, you can't just pump that water out into the public right of way and call it a deal. You're going to get in some serious trouble with the authorities if you're caught doing that. Plus, it's terrible for the environment. It leads to fish kills. All water that flows off of parking lots and buildings and structures and even parks ends up in the ocean eventually. And so our goal as experts is we want to make sure that we're sending as clean water possible out of that parking lot, removing it so you can get back to what you need to do, removing it from the garage so they can continue to utilize it for what it's for, but also doing it in a safe and environmentally friendly manner. If you see something like that, oil plumes, or you see a contaminant there, one, you have to alert the proper authorities. They're going to tell you exactly what methods you need to take, but we'll bring in one of our either one of our Sealcoat tankers or one of our larger tankers. And we'll actually pump that water directly into the tanker to be hauled off and disposed of in a legal fashion. Another thing that you want to look at, if it appears clean, it's fine. You can't just dump and dewater onto an adjacent property just because it's lower than you. It doesn't work that way. One, they're probably flooded too. Two, that's illegal. It's like throwing trash in your neighbor's yard, even though it's a liquid. What you have to do is find basically your lowest point of outlet from your property, and you need to pump in that direction out into the public right of way. When we design parking lots and buildings and structures, we have the on-site collection system. We have a ditch or a pond that retains some of that water so that we don't just flood the neighboring communities when you get a heavy rainstorm and you built a parking lot over a cow pasture. But you do have an outlet point, and that outlet point is to the right of way. So you always want to send water from your property to the place that it goes naturally. Okay, sending it elsewhere or behind you to the canal direct, unless authorized by the local municipality, is illegal, and you can get considerable fines dialed up for that. So when we talk about dewatering, primary thing is the water clean, and can you send it into an approved location for discharge? If it's not, what are you going to do about it? If it's sediment laden and you're close to the bay, you might have to dig a temporary sedimentation pond and pump that water into the sedimentation pond, let it hold in that location while the sediment settles out, then pump the clean water out to the right of way. So there's all kinds of primary and then secondary, tertiary methods to make sure that you're doing the right thing when it comes to flooding, dewatering.
And it is a wealth of knowledge and information. And I think it's a really important issue right now, because I have seen associations where they're building engineers just go grab a pump and they go stick it in the elevator shaft. And next thing you know, this oily water is all over the street. And they think that they're in some way helping, but they're realizing that, downstream, to use a kind of a cliche statement, you're going to cause other issues and potentially even financial problems for the community association. So, making sure you understand what you can or can't do as part of your planning for these things, and engaging someone like DMI to talk about it. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with all it? You can't get a hold of people. You're going to manage it. Like, how are you going to manage the situation is so important. I mean, Chad, you just went through like so many different scenarios that were just, I mean, so relevant. I was just, every time you were talking about a different one, I was like thinking like another property. Oh my God, I remember when they did this, you know? So,
Right.
so like I hear it, and we're now seeing like the deepest garage in North America is being dug right now, like right along the Biscayne Bay. And I know they're doing a ton of dewatering to be able to even do that. You know, there's, again, you know, construction techniques are evolving and changing. But one thing that's consistent is that we're having an issue with flooding right now. And it's so important to understand the limitations of what you can do as a community association or business owner when dealing with that. Another thing that comes to mind too is debris removal, which kind of a broad topic. We all kind of deal with this after any major rainstorm. We just had one yesterday, right? Blowing the trees around and, you know, kind of what you do with those things. Similar to dewatering, there's limitations of what you can do with the debris or what kind of debris is, whatever it is. So what can DMI exactly do to help property owners with, focusing on storms? What can they do with the debris? What are your services, and what differentiates trees from other debris, and how do you guys deal with that situation?
Yeah, so we're not trash men. First and foremost, there's waste management that deals with that. So when you're talking about debris, whether it's sheetrock, anything that's not a construction material or landscape, that needs to be taken to a proper location. If you need help getting it to a landfill, hey, like I said, we got trucks, but you don't want to mix. That's not something you want to ever want to do. You never want to mix landscape and construction materials if you can avoid it as well. First and foremost, especially if down here in South Florida, if you have mature trees, make sure you're documenting at least once every 2 or 3 years, especially with new plantings. Get an arborist or someone to come out, do a tree survey, see what you have, see what condition they're in. Okay. A lot of times you think, oh, that's a big, beautiful oak, and an arborist will come out and be like, this guy's dead on the inside, and you really need to get rid of it. And most municipalities will allow you to remove dead trees because they are a hazard and only plant a 1-in-1 scenario. Whereas if I needed to move, say, a very healthy live oak that's a 4-inch caliper, I'd have to plant 2 2-inch calipers or 4 1-inch calipers, and I got to find a place to do that. So document what you've got ahead of time, and that way, you really can look at, hey, I can get rid of this tree. This guy's in bad shape. They'll also tell you which ones need to be pruned. Now, a good tree and landscaping service will do that as well. These communities, certainly in my community, but overall, if you don't have a good solid root pruner that comes through at least once a year, cleans up your trees. The reason trees get uprooted in a large storm is because the canopy is so dense that it doesn't allow that wind to kind of flow through the branches and limbs. So it basically captures it, grabs it like a giant sphere, and rips it out of the ground. If it has the ability to flow through, like opening both sides of the car windows, if you have the ability to flow that wind through, you're a lot less likely of an uprooting of of a large tree and a major catastrophic thing. You might lose a couple branches here and there, but overall, you're going to be in a lot better shape after a storm event if they're properly pruned. If they're not, you're going to have the issue like we had in Pinecrest after Irma, where you had hundreds of ficus trees that ripped out miles and miles of overhead power lines and disputes with neighbors about, this was yours, this was on my property, well, it was hanging mostly on your property, if you do the proper steps and you mitigate ahead of time, you're a lot less likely to have to worry about that in the after the storm. But when it comes to the debris removal, I'm not going to make your tree look great. I'm not an arborist or a certified tree trimmer. That's not what we do. What we're going to do is we're going to get your lot or your facility cleared for access. We're going to ensure that we don't illegally dump anything anywhere. We're going to haul it off to our yard. We will separate it here in our yard, here in Miami or Tampa or Orlando. We'll make sure that once we've done all that separation, that it gets loaded and taken to the proper locations, whether it's a wood chipping facility or, very rarely will I take stuff to a landfill. I don't like it. Plus it's $70 a ton to take things to a landfill. So you can imagine with soil debris, mixed debris, you're paying $70 a ton. It can add up. And guess where that cost is going? I'm not paying for it,
No.
So it's going back to the client. So But I would say, what we'll do is when we get there after the storm, we'll assess the situation. We'll see the biggest stuff that will alert us to what kind of equipment and trucking we need. If it's minor, we'll send maybe 3-4 guys, a skid steer, and a dump truck. If it's major, we'll send our 3-yard loader. We'll send 2 dump trucks. We'll send a full crew of 7 men to go and get it done. We understand that it's critical post-storm to get up and running, especially if you're a community association, you don't have access to your property. Access is everything. If you can't get into your home or you can't get into your place of business, you're losing money, you're losing revenue, or you're not able to get to your pets. That's a problem. So we want to act fast. We want to assess the situation. We always focus on entrances and exits, and then move towards the interior of the property. If you have anything that damaged structurally, document it. Again, like you referenced, the more we take pictures and document before and after, the better off we are to tell that story, because no one's watching it during the storm. Yep. It'd be great to have video of a tree getting uprooted, how much fence line it took out, etc. We don't have that. So, but if you have accurate surveys, if you have accurate tree surveys, you do your proper tree trimming and limb pruning, and then you document everything you have before and after, you're a lot more likely to see a smooth transition into normal after we're all said and gone.
No, I think a good key point is not all debris is equal. So and you need to treat it that way. And I think a great piece of advice that you offered there was get an arborist involved early on to do a survey. I mean, how many community associations have an updated tree survey that they have access to prior to the storm? Right? Yeah. Just to know what's there. They all go through these improvement projects and they hire the architect, but where is that information? Where are you storing it so that you know what tree fell or what it's going to take to replace it? Because some of these trees, if not bushes or ground cover, is expensive, particularly when you put it all together. So all great advice. I know we're talking a lot about storms, but I also, there's a lot of other stuff going on right now, particularly in the South Florida marketplace. One of those things in the wake of Champlain South Tower and the collapse there, are a lot of questions about waterproofing and sealing and those hardscaped areas and their exposure to the elements, and what constitutes a crack that needs an engineer and one that doesn't. What has that meant to DMI, and what are you seeing in the field, and what kind of advice do you have for associations that are looking at those hardscaped areas and potential waterproofing and sealing issues?
Yeah, my biggest advice is mitigate your risk. Act quickly. If you see, foundational settlement, if you see cracks forming in either roofs, if you have a pool deck that's over the top of an underground parking garage, it's a red flag. If you have reports from the past that even mention replacement of waterproofing or re-waterproofing that decking, get the money and do the work. Waterproofing is there for a reason, and it's basically there so that the concrete subdeck that's structural isn't allowed to absorb and have water draining on top of it. We're not just talking about the load of the weight of the water itself. That's all calculated with the weight of the pool and everything like that, and the structural slab above it. We're talking about the erosion of the concrete that's underneath there because the waterproofing is worn or wasn't applied properly in the first place. What that does is eventually that water will seep through, and once it reaches the reinforcement bar, the rebar that's in that concrete, it's a massive slide from that point forward on degradation. Concrete is really good with water. Steel hates it. And when steel is inside a concrete slab and it's exposed to water over time, it's going to chip away and break away the concrete that it's holding in place. And from that point forward, you're basically, it's not if, but when you've got a catastrophic structural failure. So if you have, first of all, get an expert involved. Contractors are really good at saying, this looks fine, that doesn't look so hot, we can throw some caulk there, we can clean it up. Yes, is it important to leave cracks, to get cracks routed and caulked properly so that they don't continue to expand? Absolutely. But there's a reason for that crack. That reason may be unanticipated loading, that reason may be age. But if you're not getting to the root cause of these things, A guy putting caulk in cracks or repairing a section of waterproofing that's damaged without assessing the entire subsurface itself, you're just asking for disaster. So when you get experts involved, that does two things. One, they're going to look at the entire liability that's out there, and they're going to make an educated assessment as to how to do this. Now, you're not going to like what the report says, most likely, if you've got a 20-plus-year-old building, because they're going to cover everything that they need to. However, the second and more important part is the contractor is going to utilize that report to properly bid and get you the fix that you need. It's not them going, oh, all you need is this and this and this, and I'm off the hook once if it works, if it doesn't work. No. The more information we have as a contractor and what the experts found, they know how to do a lot more analysis than your typical general contractor or waterproofing or concrete guy. They just do. So they're going to kind of put the playbook out there, and then the contractor's there to execute. And that's why engineers and contractors need to work hand in hand. You can get good recommendations from GCs and contractors on a lot of things. But when it comes to structural elements or life safety elements, you get the professionals involved, and then you get a licensed general contractor, licensed concrete contractor to come in and do the work per the assessment that was put forth by the engineer.
No, I think it's great, and I can't agree with you more. Contractors definitely get you to spend money, and a lot of times they're just agreeing with you. So, hey, I think I have a bad roof. What do you think? Of course you're going to have a bad roof, right? So next thing you know, you're going to be replacing your roof. Again, I think take these things in steps and break them down into components. All solid advice. I mean, you even talked about the difference between, it's very difficult to tell. Yes, you have a crack, but why is it cracking, right? Get answers to those questions. Don't just assume it's one thing or the other.
Right.
Definitely need to investigate these things further. Chad, this has been a great conversation. You definitely go a little bit long today. I love the idea of getting an arborist report, hearing things like that. You're not going to hear that from many other different experts like Chad. I mean, that's great, solid advice, particularly in planning in the storm season, where right now it's something you can get, you can start doing today, right? So this is actionable information, and Chad, I'm really appreciative of you taking the time. So how can our audience find out about DMI and all of the services you guys actually provide, not just the seal coat and paving?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to www.driveway.net or DMI Paving and Sealcoating.com. That has basically all of our office information. Best way to get in touch with us. Our phone numbers are a little bit about all of our different scopes of services. We do ADA assessments and upgrades. So anything with handicap, if you either have a violation or you're making an upgrade, you need a full-blown assessment. We do that soup to nuts. Design, construction, and inspection and closeout. So we're not just seal coaters anymore. We do quite a bit of work in Florida, and we do really appreciate all of our clients out there that give back to us and keep us in mind when doing their work. So, and I really want to appreciate you for bringing me on today. Love getting an audience and an opportunity to kind of talk about what we do, some of the things that people may not know about, and some of the things that we can share education wise that, you don't know it until you've run into it and until you've failed, really. So, I've had a lot of failures in my past, which gives me the opportunity to speak about successes. So really appreciate the opportunity here to do this for you guys.
That was awesome. Thanks again, Chad. And we'll make sure that all your contact information is available. We'll make sure it gets distributed, and as well as this broadcast will continue to be live. So again, thanks so much for taking the time, Chad.
You bet.
All right, guys. That was awesome. And also, too, I want to remind you, DMI teaches continuing education class. So if you're a property manager and you see them, I've seen them teach it at CAI and a few other different organizations, definitely sign up, because as you can tell, a company like DMI offers a tremendous amount of service, and there's an advantage to working with someone like them that have the experience. I mean, Chad has licenses and things that go beyond just seal coating and paving. So he's a wealth of knowledge and information. As you can tell, he provided an awesome piece of advice, getting an arborist report, getting a tree survey, right before storm season, making sure that, or just, reviewing the tree survey or the arborist report that you might have, and then looking at how those trees are pruned can mitigate damages ahead of time, right? It could stop it from happening, right? And that's what it's really about, is doing those preventative measures to minimize the impact it has on your community. That's what this is all about. That's what being prepared is all about. That's why we talk about these things, That's why every single week we want to provide you actionable information. We want to make sure that this is information you can actually use, whether it's for your community association or business, whether it's insurance related, infrastructure related, whether it's just basic business practices. That's who we're bringing onto the show every week. We want to make sure that we have credible people providing you credible information, and I truly believe Chad and the whole team at DMI have that and will continue to provide it. So reach out to them, let them know what your needs are, perhaps find out a little bit more about their services. I mean, go online, you can obviously hit their website, but there's nothing better than getting contractors out to your property, doing walkthroughs, going to their facilities. We just did a panel discussion where we had on Greg Wallach of Best Roofing, where he talked about going and visiting facilities. It's an amazing way to learn so much about not only their operation, but the products at your property, so that you know how to properly maintain them, repair them, what it's going to cost, potentially what it's going to take to actually plan for the rebuilding phase of it. A lot of these answers to these questions can be found early on, so that when it happens, you're not just scrambling around for it and you can't get a hold of people, they're not available. That's storm season preparedness. Because when a storm hits, suddenly phones are not working, people are extremely busy, and as you heard on that panel discussion, resources are scarce. They're scarce already. Imagine if we had a hurricane in the South Florida market or another one in the Gulf Coast in Texas. Take the time to be prepared. Speaking of Texas, we just launched in Dallas, and I'm very excited to talk about it. As part of our countdown to 10 years, we're growing. It's always been about growth. It's always been about providing a better service. And part of that growth and providing that better service is making sure we're in the markets that matter, making sure we're in markets with our clients so that we are centrally located to continue to provide a better service. And I'm so excited. That press release hit the wire. It's out there. The Insurance Journal and many other major media outlets picked it up and ran with it. Contact us, find out more information. If you have assets or you have managers that are in that local market in the Dallas or anywhere in Texas, reach out to us, let us know. We want to meet who's there on the ground locally in the market. I'm very excited about it. It's all part of our 10 years. It's all about our story. And I'm excited to continue to tell our story. I'm excited to continue these broadcasts. So make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe, follow us on all the social media, hit our website, check out our resource section, just like you might do with DMI. Make sure that you're staying in contact with the insurance experts at GlobalPro to provide the information you need. And the best way to do that, check us out every Thursday at 11 o'clock. We're here on the Recovery Report Live. And I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks again to Chad, DMI, and everyone that tuned in this week on the Recovery Report Live.